You open the box, the glass is heavy, the cap clicks with that satisfying weight. You spray once, maybe twice.
And for the first 10 minutes, the smell is immaculate, expensive, confident, like money made visible through vapor.
Then 2 hours pass, you check your wrist, you check your collar. Almost nothing is left, so here is the question. You should have asked before handing over your card, did you just pay for a world-class fragrance formula? Or did you pay for a bottle that felt like a sculpture? A campaign you've seen on the side of a building?
In 3 different countries, and a logo that tells everyone in the room you can afford to spend that much.
Because here's the thing about luxury perfume, that the industry does not want to be your opening conversation. The same bottle
Can cost under $10 to fill with liquid, the rest of what you paid for, and you can be paying
$8,200, $400 is packaging, licensing, distribution margin, retailer commission, celebrity contract, and the particular category of social comfort. That comes from wearing a name people recognize. None of that is a crime, but none of that is fragrance either. Today, we are going in on 610 brands and products, 9 luxury names that every man in this space respects
and should start questioning a lot more deliberately, and then 7 alternatives that can deliver real scent construction.
Real performance, real identity, and real value per dollar spent. Not cheaper for the sake of cheap, better for the sake of actually understanding what you are buying. Before we go anywhere, here is the framework. 4 things you should evaluate every time you consider a luxury fragrance purchase. First, price per milliliter, not the ticket price, the actual cost of the liquid you are getting. Second, projection and longevity, not in the store spray, not in the first 20 minutes, on your skin 4 to 6 hours into the day. Third, olfactive originality. Does this smell like something genuinely constructed? Or does it smell like the current commercial template for your demographic? And fourth, evolution. Does the fragrance change across its dry down? Does it tell a story on your skin? Or does it open strong and collapse into a skin-closed ghost by noon?
Those 4 things together tell you what you actually bought. Now, let us look at 9 names that too many men
buy without asking any of them. Number 1 is Chanel. And before you close the video, understand that this is not an attack. Chanel has some of the most carefully constructed masculine fragrances in the commercial space. The problem is not the product.
The problem is the automatic purchase. The problem is a man walking into a department store, picking up Bleu de Chanel,
Or Allure Homme Sport, buying it because it is Chanel, and never once asking himself whether this was the best possible thing he could do with that amount of money. Bleu de Chanel is a good fragrance, clean, versatile, inoffensive to the point of being universally acceptable. And that last part is the tell. When a fragrance is universally acceptable, it has been engineered to offend no one.
That is not the same as being memorable. Platinum Egoiste from the 90s had personality, edge, something you either loved or hated.
Modern Chanel masculine releases trend towards safe. You are paying for taste that has been so refined it no longer takes any risks. That is an expensive way to smell like nothing wrong. Number 2 is Dior. Specifically, we need to talk about Sauvage.
Dior Sauvage is one of the best-selling men's fragrances in the world, which is part of the problem. It is well made.
The lavender and ambroxan backbone is effective, clean, immediately recognizable. That last word is the issue again. Sauvage has become so ubiquitous.
That wearing it is less a personal statement and more a demographic signal. You are not saying, this is who I am.
You are saying, I bought what was recommended to me at the counter, or by the algorithm, or by the fact that every man I know between 20 and 40 is wearing this. The elixir version adds richness and depth. The EDP version is softer and slightly more interesting, but the core question remains, when you spray Sauvage, are you expressing your actual taste? Or are you confirming that you know what men are supposed to smell like in 2024? Dior Homme, the older version, was a masterpiece. Powdery, iris-heavy, genuinely strange for a masculine release. The newer iterations are easier to wear and harder to remember.
Black bottles, gold lettering, names like Tobacco Vanille and Tuscan Leather and Noir Extreme, and many of the private blend releases are genuinely constructed.
Oud Wood is a modern classic with real development and longevity. The issue is the price-to-experience ratio on certain releases.
And the way the brand has expanded into territory that feels more like product line than curation, you can spend more per milliliter on a Tom Ford fragrance than on almost any other designer brand on the market. For some releases, that cost is justified.
For others, you are paying a significant premium for the bottle design, the brand attitude, and the retail environment in which you found it.
The question to ask every single time with Tom Ford: is this a fragrance that earned its price through construction and performance?
Or is this a fragrance that costs what it costs because the brand has trained you to associate the price with prestige?
Those are not the same calculation. Number 4 is Creed, and this one we have to handle with care because the mythology runs deep. Creed has been positioning itself as the fragrance house of kings, military figures, and aristocracy for decades. Aventus is one of the most talked about fragrances.
In this hobby, with its pineapple and birch smoke opening and its cool, sophisticated dry down, Green Irish Tweed predates Cool Water
And is one of the originators of the clean masculine genre. The problem is not the history, the problem is the price.
The batch variation, meaning the same bottle can smell measurably different depending on when it was produced, and the fact that Creed is no longer
the independent artisan house the mythology implies. Kering completed its acquisition of Creed in 2023, and subsequently L'Oreal moved to acquire Kering Beauté.
Including Creed in 2026, the house that was supposedly blending fragrances by hand for royal clients is now part of one of the largest
beauty conglomerates on Earth. That doesn't make Aventus smell worse, but it should absolutely affect how you evaluate the premium you are paying.
for heritage and craftsmanship, and it should make you seriously consider the fact that the Aventus clone market exists specifically because the experience
can be approximated for a fraction of the price. Number 5 is Gucci. Gucci's power in fragrance is almost entirely a function
of the brand's overall cultural dominance, not a function of what's in the bottle. Gucci Guilty for Men is functional, accessible, built for broad appeal.
Gucci Parfum 2 had interesting tobacco and incense character, but was reformulated into something considerably more muted. Gucci Intense Oud is one of their more ambitious releases, with genuine oud character, but when you look at the line as a whole, it looks more like a fashion house extending its image into fragrance than a perfumery doing focused olfactive work. There is nothing wrong with wanting a perfume that carries the Gucci name. The social signal is real, and it does something for the wearer. The honest question is whether the fragrance itself would still interest you if the box said a name you had never heard of. For most of the Gucci masculine line, the answer is probably no. Number 6 is Yves Saint Laurent, and the modern YSL masculine releases
are extraordinarily good at one specific thing, making you smell like someone immediately attractive in a room full of people who know nothing about fragrance. La Nuit de l'Homme is romantic, effortlessly sensual, a masterclass in cardamom and wood. YEDP has impressive sillage and appeal. MYSLF is bold, bright, easy to project, the pattern is unmistakable, every release is optimized for the Elogio Rapido, the fast complement. The reaction within 30 seconds, the fragrance that reads well immediately. What YSL does less well is depth, evolution, and individuality. The house speaks in a consistent commercial dialect, ambroxan, bergamot, lavender, sweet woods, or pepper. It is also a very crowded one. If everyone in your office smells like the modern YSL palette, you are not expressing yourself. You are participating in a consensus of what commercially successful masculinity is supposed to smell like right now. Number 7 is Armani.
Acqua di Gio is one of the most important fragrances in the history of modern masculine perfumery. It redefined what a clean, aquatic, wearable masculine could be in the 90s, and it has been the reference point for literally hundreds of releases since.
It is also, at this point, wallpaper, something that so many men have worn for so long that it has become invisible.
The coat is polished, well-made, genuinely distinguished. Stronger With You has that instant appeal sweetness that reviews extremely well online.
The Armani problem is the same as the YSL problem, but quieter. Everything is impeccably pleasant, nothing is daring. Nothing makes you feel like the perfumer took a risk. The price point reflects Armani's position as a luxury brand. Not necessarily the ambition of what's in the bottle. Number 8 is Rabanne, or Paco Rabanne, depending on when you first encountered the brand.
1 million launched in 2008 and has not stopped selling since. The bottle is a gold bar. The smell is sweet, leathery, fresh spiced, instant impact.
It works. The problem is that it works in a very specific, very recognizable, very commercially legible way. The fragrance was designed to be chosen in under 10 seconds in a department store, to project into the aisle, to get noticed. Puig reported strong performance for Rabanne alongside Carolina Herrera and Jean-Paul Gaultier across global selective fragrance markets, and you can feel the commercial logic. In every release, Invictus is fresh, sporty, slightly aquatic sour, and built for maximum projection. Phantom is synthetic sweetness and wood in a robot bottle.
These are products engineered for a demographic response, not for personal expression, and you should know that when you pick one up.
And this might be the most under-examined brand on this list in terms of the gap between brand image and fragrance depth.
Bad Boy has become a marketing phenomenon. The boot-shaped bottle is one of the most recognizable objects in masculine fragrance retail right now.
212 Men was a clean, urban, slightly metallic fragrance that performed well for years, but the question here is whether the extraordinary visual identity of these products creates a halo that protects them from real scrutiny. Bad Boy is a quality fragrance, warm, slightly woody, with some interesting vetiver and cacao, but when you evaluate it strictly as a liquid, separate from the bottle that you genuinely cannot stop staring at.
Does it justify its price versus what else exists at that level? The marketing machinery around Carolina Herrera fragrance is impressive. The liquid inside the machinery deserves the same independent evaluation you'd apply to anything else. Now let us look at what connects all 9
of these entries before we move into the alternatives, because it is not that these brands are lying to you.
It is something more structural than that. Every single one of these brands operates inside a system where the fragrance is not the primary product.
The primary product is brand permission, the ability to enter a status category, to be associated with a name, to communicate something about yourself.
Through an object that sits on a shelf in a particular kind of store, the fragrance is the delivery mechanism. That system is completely legal, completely transparent when you think about it, and completely invisible when you are standing in a cloud of tester spray.
In a lit department store with a salesperson and a campaign image and a celebrity name in front of you.
The result across all 9 of these houses is a set of predictable tendencies, openings that project aggressively in the spray bottle, because that is the purchase moment, formulas that trend toward immediately likable rather than genuinely interesting, creative decisions shaped by what is most likely,
to scale across global markets and price points that bundle the actual liquid together with campaign production, celebrity contracts, real estate, packaging.
And a margin that reflects brand equity as much as fragrance quality, there is also a chemistry-level phenomenon worth understanding.
Modern commercial fragrances across most of these brands lean heavily on a handful of synthetic molecules that are inexpensive, highly potent,
and extremely effective at generating immediate appeal. Ambroxan for that skin-close, slightly musky sexiness. Iso-E Super for transparent wood depth.
Ethylene brassylate for sweetness and softness. These molecules are not bad, they are efficient, but when every brand uses them in similar proportions, the result is a kind of olfactive consensus, a shared smell of contemporary masculinity that has been A/B tested into maximum acceptability. IFR regulations on allergens and concentration limits have also been gradually reshaping classic formulas over time, which is part of why some iconic fragrances
from these houses do not perform exactly as they did 15 years ago. So after you understand the machine, what do you do with it?
You upgrade your criteria, and then you look at what these 7 alternatives are actually doing differently. Number 1 is Mancera. Paris-based, founded by Pierre Montale's protégé Jean-Claude Astier, Mancera fragrances are not cheap, but when you calculate the price per milliliter
against what you get in projection, longevity, and olfactive character, the math is frequently more favorable than what you'd pay for a designer house equivalent.
Cedrat Boisé is a masterclass in citrus wood construction. The bergamot and cedar opener is bright and precise. The base is warm and resinous.
And it lasts on skin in a way that most designer citrus releases simply don't. Red tobacco is bold, slightly sweet, and
with a dark tobacco and woody amber character that outperforms many releases twice its price per milliliter. Instant Crush is romantic and vanillic. With genuine warmth, the Mancera value proposition is straightforward. Larger bottles, more concentrated formulas, less spent on brand image infrastructure.
What you are actually buying, number 2, is Montale, also Paris-based, and part of a broader wave of houses that took Middle Eastern olfactive sensibilities. Oud, rose, amber, musk, and made them accessible to Western fine fragrance buyers before niche fragrance was as mainstream as it is now. Intense Café is one of the most distinctive masculine fragrances available at its price point. Coffee, rose, and oud in a combination that reads completely original and projects powerfully. Black oud is dark, resinous, complex, built around a woody oud accord that most designer houses would either not attempt or would dilute beyond recognition to be more marketable. Arabian's Tonka is warm, sweet, deeply comforting.
Tonka, musk, wood in a combination that outperforms many well-known designer orientals at half the price. The critique of Montale is that some bottles
can feel heavy on synthetics and the construction is not always refined, fair, but the personality is real and the performance tends to justify.
The purchase, number 3, is Essential Parfums, and this one might surprise you if you've only heard about it in passing.
Essential Parfum is a French house built around one proposition: take a talented perfumer, give them minimal commercial constraints, and produce focused, excellent fragrances. At a price that reflects actual liquid quality rather than brand storytelling, Bois Imperial is the standout, a clean, sophisticated, woody oriental with excellent longevity and a construction that is genuinely elegant rather than just loud. Nice Bergamot is a textbook study in how citrus should evolve.
On skin, fresh opening, warm dry down, genuine development rather than linear spray and fade. Fig Infusion is green, creamy, interesting, a fragrance that you would not find
at any designer counter because it is too specific to scale commercially. Essential Parfums is the answer to the question, what happens when the fragrance
is actually the product, less theater, more perfume? At its price point, it is frequently one of the most intelligent buys in this space.
And her house operates from a perspective that is almost entirely absent from the brands discussed in the first half of this video.
There is no campaign logic. There is no global scaling strategy that requires the formula to work in 40 countries simultaneously.
They're a perfumer making fragrances with a specific vision. New York Intense is earthy, green, slightly spicy, genuinely masculine without being one-dimensional.
Patchouli Intense is a patchouli fragrance that actually smells like patchouli rather than a patchouli accord serving as a background note in a synthetic pileup. Cap Neroli is neroli and oak moss built for intelligent wear. These fragrances are for a man who has decided that his fragrance should actually reflect
something about him, not signal membership in a demographic category. If you are spending designer money trying to seem refined,
Nicolaï is what refinement actually sounds like when it doesn't need to prove anything. Number 5 is Parfums de Marly.
And we need to be transparent here. Parfums de Marly is expensive. It is not the value alternative in the traditional sense. But when you evaluate it against the Tom Ford and Creed price tier, the conversation changes. Leighton is one of the most complete masculine fragrances
released in the last decade, apple, pepper, violet, and a sandalwood amber base that develops beautifully and projects with a quality that reads as genuinely premium.
Herod is warm, rich tobacco and patchouli with an old-world character that very few designer houses would even attempt in a commercial release.
Carlisle is cool, spiced, well-dressed, a fragrance that communicates exactly what Tom Ford tries to communicate, but with more actual elegance and less performance. Of elegance, Pegasus is the clean, white woods powerhouse that outperforms most designer fresh masculines in both longevity and construction quality. If your question is where to spend luxury money on fragrance, such that the fragrance actually justifies the luxury spend, Parfums de Marly is consistently the more defensible answer than most of what is in the first 9. Number 6 is Amouage, and this is where we change the level of the conversation entirely. Amouage is a house from Oman, founded in 1983, and for a long time it operated at the absolute apex
of what fine fragrance could be: expensive materials, complex compositions, dramatic olfactive statements that had no interest in being universally accessible.
Interlude Man is one of the most discussed masculine fragrances in the serious enthusiast community. Incense, oud, amber, and oregano in a combination that is genuinely challenging, genuinely rewarding, and genuinely unforgettable. Reflection Man is the opposite: clean, restrained, almost transparent in its elegance.
With white musks and woods that linger like a memory, Jubilation XX5 is a dense, opulent oriental that takes the kind of materials designers routinely
dilute and actually build something structured out of them. Beach Hut Man, one of their more recent releases, is an aquatic that actually justifies
the words sea salt, driftwood, and clean musks in a combination that makes Armani's aquatics feel like concept sketches. Amouage is not an entry point.
It is a destination. When you understand what Amouage is doing, you understand what the commercial mainstream is not doing. And you can never unsee that. Number 7 is Hermès, specifically through the lens of Terre d'Hermès and the masculine releases that follow a different.
Logic from most of what we've discussed today, this entry might seem contradictory given everything said about the first 9 brands, but Hermès is, in many respects, the exception to the rule, a luxury fashion house that has consistently invested in fragrance as a genuine craft rather than a revenue extension. Jean-Claude Helena, the house's perfumer for over a decade, built a body of work that remains some of the most architecturally interesting in mass-accessible fine fragrance. Terre d'Hermès is the flagship proof, flint, orange, wood, and vetiver in a spare, precise composition that does not need projection to have presence. It has personality, not volume. H24 is the contemporary masculine statement. Green, herbal, white musk.
Else in the designer space, Eau d'Orange Verte is arguably the best value in the entire Hermès masculine range. Simple, bright, focused, the kind of fragrance that a man of actual taste wears on a Tuesday morning without needing it to announce itself. Hermès proves that designer luxury and genuine fragrance craft are not mutually exclusive, but it also proves that they are genuinely rare at that level, because if it were normal, it wouldn't.
Need to stand out. Now let's bring this back to the only question that actually matters. After you've looked at 9 respected names and 7
alternatives, the framework should be clear. When you stand in front of a fragrance display, 4 things are bundled into that bottle, the actual liquid.
The bottle and packaging, the brand narrative and advertising, and the social signal the name provides, all 4 of those are real. All 4 have value to different people in different situations. The mistake, and it is an expensive one, is paying for all 4 of them while only evaluating one.
When you buy Sauvage because it's Dior, you are paying for 3 things you may not need and 1 thing you may not have tested thoroughly enough.
When you buy Aventus at Creed's current pricing under its new ownership structure, you are paying a significant premium for the mythology of independence and heritage that the ownership structure actively complicates. When you buy a Tom Ford fragrance because the bottle looks extraordinary, you are making an aesthetic decision.
About packaging and calling it a fragrance decision, none of this means you should never buy a designer fragrance. Some of the most beautifully constructed
fragrances in the world are sold under famous fashion names at every price tier. The issue is the word automatically, buying automatically, trusting automatically, never.
Asking whether the price maps to the performance in the way the presentation implies it does. The 7 alternatives in the second half of this video
are there because they ask something different of their buyer. They ask you to evaluate the liquid, not just the legacy. To notice the dry down,
not just the opening blast, to consider what the fragrance costs per milliliter relative to how long it performs on your skin, to ask whether
the construction is original or whether it is the 37th iteration of the Ambroxan Bergamot Woods template that has been the dominant masculine commercial formula for the past decade.
A man who understands fragrance at that level is impossible to oversell. He knows what he is paying for in each purchase. He knows when. Designer name is worth the premium and when it is not. He knows the difference between a fragrance that performs and a fragrance that presents.
Well, in the spray bottle, he knows that a smaller, less theatrical bottle from a house he had to discover for himself can deliver more.
Actual olfactive experience than 3 bottles of something his algorithm recommended. The market counts on you not knowing this. Every campaign, every celebrity face, every
Instagram post showing a heavy crystal bottle in golden light is betting that the image will do the work that the liquid should have to.
Earn on its own, sometimes the liquid earns it. More often than you would guess, the image is doing the majority of the work.
The rule you should leave with is this. Before you buy any fragrance above $50 a bottle, ask what you are actually paying for, spray it. Wait 45 minutes, come back to it, ask whether it is still interesting or whether it already started to collapse. Ask whether it smells like something specific and constructed, or whether it smells like this season's consensus of what a well-dressed man is supposed to smell like. Ask whether you would still want it if the label were blank and you had to argue for the price purely on the basis of the smell, if. The answer is yes, you are about to make a good purchase. If the answer is uncertainty, you might be about to pay a lot.
Of money for a logo, a bottle, and the comfortable feeling of having bought something that everyone already agrees is acceptable.
Luxury fragrance is not a scam, but buying luxury fragrance on autopilot is one of the most expensive ways to smell like you care. Without actually knowing what you smell like, if this changes how you look at a label the next time you're in a store, that's the point. Subscribe if you want more of this, because next time we're going inside the cost structure of a $100 bottle.
and showing you exactly where every dollar actually goes. Fim da narrativa.